March 14th, 2017, Canadian police storm a suburban house. In the backyard, a 22-year-old is running for his life. His crime? 13 lines of code that gave Vladimir Putin the power to read anyone's email on Earth. This isn't your typical cybercrime story. This is about how a petty criminal became the key weapon in Russia's war against dissidents, journalists, and American democracy. It's about a young man who thought he was just making easy money until he realized he was working for one of the world's most dangerous intelligence agencies. Today, we're diving into the true story of Karim Baratov, how a teenager's basement hacking operation caught the attention of Russian intelligence, how he helped execute the most devastating cyber attack in history, and why he's now serving 5 years in American prison while his handlers walk free in Moscow. Chapter 1. The Basement Empire. Karim Baratov was born in Kazakhstan in 1994, but his family emigrated to Canada when he was young. By his teens, he was living what seemed like a normal suburban life in Ancaster, Ontario, a quiet town near Hamilton. But in the basement of his parents' modest house, Baratov was building a criminal enterprise that would eventually span continents. While other teenagers were playing video games, Baratov was mastering the art of phishing, creating fake websites that looked identical to legitimate services to steal passwords. He wasn't targeting random victims. Baratov had a system. He'd research his targets on social media, craft personalized emails, and trick them into entering credentials on his fake sites. By 2014, at just 20 years old, he was making thousands of dollars a month from this basement operation. The money was intoxicating. By 2015, Baratov was pulling in 6 figures annually, more than most college graduates could dream of. He bought a black Aston Martin, then a lime green Lamborghini Gallardo that screamed down quiet Canadian streets. His Instagram became a shrine to excess. Rolex watches, thick stacks of $100 bills, first-class flights to Dubai. To his immigrant parents, their son looked like the American dream come true. To his neighbors, he was the mysterious young entrepreneur who somehow afforded supercars. None of them knew that every dollar was soaked in digital blood stolen from victims whose lives he was systematically destroying, one phishing email at a time. Baratov's phishing operations were surprisingly sophisticated for a self-taught hacker. He used a technique called credential harvesting, creating exact replicas of login pages for services like Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook. When victims entered their passwords, the fake site would capture the credentials and forward them to a database Baratov controlled. He employed URL shorteners and domain spoofing to make his links appear legitimate, and he constantly rotated his infrastructure to avoid detection by security companies. By 2016, Baratov had refined his operation into a profitable business. He advertised his services on underground forums, offering to hack specific email accounts for $100 each. But he was still a small-time skilled criminal operating in the minor leagues. In his parents' suburban house, surrounded by the trappings of his success, the young immigrant from Kazakhstan had no idea he was being watched. What Baratov didn't know was that his reputation had reached some very dangerous people in Moscow, and they had plans that would transform his basement business into a weapon that could topple governments. Chapter 2. Moscow Comes Calling. In Moscow, 2 men were planning something unprecedented. Dmitry Dokuchayev and Igor Sushkin worked for the FSB, Russia's Federal Security Service, the successor to the KGB. Dokuchayev was a former hacker turned intelligence officer, while Sushkin was a career spy. Together, they were developing a plan to penetrate American technology companies and steal intelligence on a massive scale. The FSB officers had a problem that would make your blood run cold. They needed hackers with specific skills to execute their plan, but they couldn't risk using official Russian assets. One intercepted communication would expose state involvement. Their solution was brilliant, terrifying. Recruit foreign cybercriminals who had no idea that they were working for Russian intelligence. These unwitting assets would provide perfect deniability if the operation was discovered. If caught, they'd be seen as common criminals, not enemy agents, expendable, disposable. Perfect. The Russians reached out to Baratov through intermediaries, other hackers who had been gradually drawn into their network. They presented themselves as fellow criminals looking to buy his services. The initial requests seemed routine: hack into specific email accounts, provide access to certain targets. To the 22-year-old in his parents' basement, it felt like just another payday, but every conversation was being carefully orchestrated by professionals who had spent decades manipulating assets. Baratov had no idea that he was being recruited by one of the world's most sophisticated intelligence agencies, or that accepting these jobs would make him a target of two superpowers. Baratov was an ideal recruit for the FSB's purposes. He was skilled but not sophisticated enough to recognize the true nature of his employers. He was motivated purely by money, not ideology, making him easy to manipulate. Most importantly, he was operating from Canada, a Western country with strong legal protections that would make it difficult for Russian intelligence to be directly implicated if he was caught. Picture this: you're a hacker sitting in your bedroom in Canada. You get a message from someone claiming to be a fellow criminal. They speak your language, technical jargon, dark web slang, cryptocurrency references. They pay promptly, never ask questions, seem professional. What you don't know is that 4,000 miles away in Moscow, a team of psychologists has spent months crafting the perfect psychological profile to manipulate you. The FSB's recruitment of foreign hackers represented a revolutionary evolution in espionage. Traditional spy agencies recruited assets face-to-face, building relationships over years. But cyber operations allowed intelligence agencies to recruit technical specialists remotely using encrypted communications and cryptocurrency payments to maintain perfect anonymity. They could identify, assess, recruit, and deploy foreign assets without ever meeting them. Baratov wasn't just being hired, he was being hunted. Chapter 3: The Yahoo Blueprint. By 2013, the FSB had identified Yahoo as the perfect target for their intelligence operation. With over 1 billion users worldwide, Yahoo's email service was used by journalists, activists, government officials, and ordinary citizens across the globe. More importantly, Yahoo's security was notoriously weak compared to competitors like Google. The Russians saw an opportunity to gain unprecedented access to global communications. The FSB's plan required inside knowledge of Yahoo's systems. Dmitry Dokuchayev, the former hacker turned intelligence officer, understood that breaking into Yahoo would require more than external attacks. The Russians needed to recruit criminal hackers who could work alongside the FSB technical specialists to develop sophisticated attack methods that could penetrate Yahoo's defenses from multiple angles. Here's what made Baratov's work so devastating. Imagine your house key, but instead of opening one door, it opens every door in your neighborhood. Yahoo's authentication system relied on browser cookies, tiny files that basically said, this person's already logged in, let them through. The FSB discovered that they could forge these cookies. Think of it as creating perfect fake IDs that never expired. Once they had forged cookies for any Yahoo account, they could read emails, access cloud storage, even reset passwords for other services, all without the victim ever knowing. The victim would log into their Yahoo account normally, never realizing that the Russian spies were reading over their digital shoulder. It was like having a master key to 3 billion people's private lives. To execute their plan, the FSB assembled a team that mixed intelligence professionals with criminal hackers. Dokuchayev and Sushkin provided strategic direction and technical expertise. Alexei Balan, a notorious Russian cybercriminal already wanted by the FBI, brought advanced hacking skills, and Baratov, operating from his Canadian basement, provided the phishing capabilities needed to steal initial credentials and target specific individuals. What made the Yahoo operation unique wasn't just its technical sophistication, it was the scope of its objectives. The FSB wasn't just looking to steal corporate secrets or financial data. They wanted to create a permanent backdoor into the global email communications of journalists, activists, government officials, and anyone else who might threaten Russian interests. They were building the digital equivalent of a master key to the world's private conversations, and sitting in his basement in Canada, posting photos of his Lamborghini on Instagram, Karim Baratov was about to become their most valuable asset whether he realized it or not. Chapter 4: The Breach Begins. In late 2013, the FSB-led team successfully breached Yahoo's network using a sophisticated spear phishing campaign. Unlike Baratov's typical operations targeting individual users, this attack was designed to compromise Yahoo employees with access to the company's core systems. Once inside, the attackers began the methodical process of escalating their privileges and gaining access to Yahoo's user database. As the operation expanded, Baratov's role became more significant and infinitely more dangerous. The FSB handlers began sending him lists, names, email addresses, but these weren't random targets. Maria Pervak is a journalist investigating corruption in Ukraine. Boris Nemtsov, a Russian opposition leader who would be assassinated months later. John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. Each name represented someone who posed a threat to the Putin regime. Beretov would spend hours researching these people, crafting personalized phishing emails designed to steal their most private communications. In his basement in Canada, surrounded by luxury cars and stacks of cash, did the young hacker ever Google these names? Did he realize he was helping Russia hunt dissidents, silence journalists, and interfere with democratic elections? The evidence suggests he was beginning to understand, but by then, he was already in too deep to escape. Watch how Beretov destroyed lives with just a few keystrokes. Target: a Ukraine journalist investigating Russian war crimes. Step 1. Beretov studies her Twitter, LinkedIn, recent articles. Discovers she's just returned from covering a peace conference in Geneva. Step 2. He creates a perfect fake email, claiming to be from a fellow journalist who met her at the conference. The email includes a link to photos from the event, but it's actually a replica of the Yahoo login page, pixel perfect down to the favicon. Step 3. The journalist, tired after a long day of writing, clicks the link, enters her password without thinking. Step 4. Beretov's system captures her credentials and immediately forwards them to the FSB handlers in Moscow. Within hours, Russian intelligence has access to her sources, her unpublished investigations, her private communications with other dissidents. Her life's work and potentially her life itself now is in the hands of the very people she's investigating, all because a young man in Canada who just wanted to buy another sports car. The stolen Yahoo credentials provided the FSB with access to an unprecedented intelligence resource. Beyond the obvious value of reading private emails, Yahoo accounts often served as recovery addresses for other services. This meant that compromising a single Yahoo account could provide access to banking, social media, cloud storage, and other services linked to that email address. The FSB had essentially gained the ability to assume the complete digital identity of their targets. As 2014 progressed, Beretov's target list grew longer and more specific and more terrifying. He was asked to hack accounts belonging to Russian opposition figures, American diplomats, Ukrainian journalists, and technology executives. Each successful hack earned him $100, but he had no idea that his work was providing Russian intelligence with a real-time view into the private communication of people who posed threats to the Putin regime. To Beretov, these were just well-paying customers with unusual target preferences. But late at night in his basement, as he crafted yet another phishing email designed to destroy someone's life, did he ever wonder who these people were? Did he ever Google their names and realize he was targeting democracy activists, investigative journalists, and freedom fighters? The young man who had come to Canada seeking opportunity was now a weapon aimed at the heart of the free world, and he was running out of time before someone noticed. Chapter 5. 3 billion accounts compromised. By 2016, security researchers were beginning to piece together the true scope of the Yahoo breach. What initially appeared to be a criminal hack for financial gain was revealed to be something far more devastating. The attackers hadn't just stolen some user data. They had compromised the personal information of all 3 billion Yahoo user accounts, making it the largest data breach in human history. 3 billion people. Every Yahoo user who had ever created an account since the service launched. Names, email addresses, phone numbers, birth dates, encrypted passwords, the digital DNA of half the internet. But here's what makes your blood run cold. The FSB wasn't interested in selling this data on criminal markets. They were building something far more sinister, the most comprehensive surveillance database ever assembled. With access to 3 billion email accounts, Russian intelligence could monitor communications, track relationships, identify potential assets, and eliminate threats anywhere in the world. They had essentially wiretapped the planet. The technical method used to extract 3 billion user records required sophisticated database queries and data exfiltration techniques. The attackers used SQL commands to systematically extract user information from Yahoo's servers, compressing and encrypting the data before transmitting it to servers controlled by the FSB. To avoid detection, they limited the speed of the data extraction and used multiple exit points to distribute the traffic. The entire process took months and required careful coordination to avoid triggering Yahoo's security monitoring systems. Yahoo executives faced an impossible choice when they discovered the breach. Admitting that 3 billion user accounts had been compromised would destroy the company's reputation and tank its stock price. More importantly, Yahoo was in the middle of negotiating a $4.8 billion sale to Verizon, a deal that would collapse if the full extent of the breach became public. The company chose to minimize and delay disclosure, a decision that would have serious legal consequences. Throughout this period, Baratov continued his work, willfully blind to the magnitude of what he was enabling. His handlers were careful to maintain operational security, communicating through encrypted channels, paying in cryptocurrency, and never revealing their true identities or objectives. As far as Baratov knew, he was just a successful freelance hacker, making good money from his basement operation. But the target lists were getting more specific, the requests more urgent, and the payments more generous. Deep down, the young man who had immigrated to Canada for a better life must have known he was crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. He had no idea he was the key operative in one of the most significant intelligence operations of the 21st century, or that investigators on 2 continents were already closing in. Chapter 6: The FBI Closes In. By early 2016, FBI cybercrime investigators were tracking multiple threads that would eventually lead them to the Yahoo breach conspiracy. American intelligence agencies had detected unusual activity targeting US government officials and were working to identify the source. Simultaneously, Yahoo's security team was conducting their own investigation into the massive data theft, gradually uncovering evidence of state-sponsored involvement. The FBI's breakthrough came from analyzing the attack infrastructure used in the Yahoo breach. Investigators discovered that some of the same servers and techniques had been used in previous attacks linked to Russian intelligence. More importantly, they identified communication patterns between the attackers that suggested coordination by a sophisticated organization, not typical criminal hackers working independently. While the FSB officers remained hidden behind layers of operational security, Baratov made critical errors that exposed him to investigation. His use of personal email accounts to communicate with intermediaries, his failure to properly anonymize financial transactions, and his continued residence at his parents' house in Canada made him vulnerable to traditional law enforcement techniques. Most damaging of all was his arrogance. The young hacker who posted photos of luxury cars and stacks of cash on social media had painted a target on his back. The FBI began building a comprehensive profile of all his activities and associates, unaware that their target was sleeping peacefully in a suburban Ontario bedroom, believing he was untouchable. Digital forensics played a crucial role in connecting Baratov to the Yahoo breach. Investigators analyzed metadata from phishing emails, traced cryptocurrency transactions through blockchain analysis, and identified commonalities in all the code used across different attacks. They also employed traffic analysis, studying patterns of communication between servers to map the relationship between different actors in the conspiracy. This painstaking technical detective work gradually revealed the structure of the FSB's hacker network and Baratov's central role in targeting specific individuals. Chapter 7: The Arrest. March 14th, 2017, 6:47 a.m. Karim Baratov is asleep in his childhood bedroom when the sound of shattering glass explodes through the house. Canadian tactical officers pour through the front door, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Baratov bolts upright, adrenaline flooding his system. This can't be happening. This was supposed to be untouchable. As officers flood the house, the 22-year-old who thought he was smarter than any government on Earth makes one final desperate decision. He runs. Through the back of the door, across the yard, past the Lamborghini that won't save him now. But there are officers everywhere. In seconds, it's over. The hacker who helped Russia steal 3 billion accounts is face down on Canadian soil, zip-tied and reading his rights. His digital empire, 4 years of luxury built on stolen passwords, crumble in exactly 97 seconds. The search of Baratov's house revealed the full extent of his operation. Investigators seized multiple computers, the external hard drives containing thousands of stolen credentials, expensive cars purchased with criminal proceeds, and the evidence of his communication with FSB handlers. Most damaging were his detailed records of his hacking activities, including lists of targets that clearly indicated his work wasn't typical cybercrime, but rather targeted intelligence operations. In March 2017, a federal grand jury in San Francisco indicted Baratov alongside the two FSB officers and Russian criminal hacker Alexei Balan. The charges included computer fraud, economic espionage, and conspiracy. While Dokuchayev, Sushchin, and Balan remained safely in Russia, beyond the reach of American law enforcement, Baratov faced the full weight of the US justice system as the only member of the conspiracy in custody. Baratov's lawyers fought his extradition to the United States, arguing that he was a Canadian citizen who should be tried in Canadian courts. But the evidence of his involvement in attacks against American targets was overwhelming, and Canadian authorities agreed to the extradition request. In August 2017, Baratov was transported to San Francisco to face trial, becoming the first person ever extradited from Canada to the United States for cybercrime charges. Chapter 8. Justice and Consequences. November 2017, a federal courthouse in San Francisco. Kareem Baratov, now dressed in an orange jumpsuit instead of designer clothes, stands before a judge and speaks the words that will haunt him forever. Guilty, Your Honor. The plea agreement is a devil's bargain. Admit to conspiracy charges, cooperate with investigators, and maybe avoid a life sentence. For the first time since his arrest, Baratov publicly admits what he had long denied, that he knew his work was likely supporting intelligence operations, not typical cybercrime. As he speaks these words, his voice barely audible, you can see the exact moment a young man realizes he had been used, manipulated, abandoned. The Russians who promised him easy money are nowhere to be found. He is utterly, completely alone. In May 2018, a federal judge sentenced Baratov to 5 years in prison and ordered him to pay $250,000 in restitution. While this was significantly less than the potential life sentence he faced, it was still a devastating outcome for the young hacker. The judge noted that while Baratov was clearly a secondary player in the conspiracy, his skills had been essential for the operation's success, and he had continued his work even after learning about potential intelligence connections. Here's the part that should make you furious. While Kareem Baratov sits in an American federal prison wearing a uniform and counting days, Dmitry Dokuchayev and Igor Sushchin are probably at this very moment sitting in comfortable Moscow offices planning their next operation. They never spent a single day in custody, never faced a judge, never answered for turning a naive young man into a weapon against democracy. Russia doesn't extradite its own citizens ever. So the career intelligence officers who recruited, manipulated, and ultimately discarded Baratov continue their work while their expendable assets pays the price for their ambitions. The message is clear. If you're Russian intelligence, you are untouchable. If you're a foreign kid they recruit, you're completely expendable. This isn't justice, it's international politics played with human lives. Chapter 9. The Lasting Impact. The revelation of the Yahoo breaches devastated the company's reputation and financial value. Verizon renegotiated the acquisition price, reducing it to $350 million due to the security failures. Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer was forced to forfeit millions in bonuses, and the company faced multiple lawsuits from users whose data had been stolen. The once mighty internet pioneer was essentially destroyed by its failure to protect user data. The Yahoo case marked a turning point in how the United States responds to state-sponsored cybercrime. The explicit naming of FSB officers in criminal indictments sent a clear message that cyber operations would have diplomatic consequences even if the perpetrators couldn't be arrested. The case also highlighted how intelligence agencies were increasingly using criminal hackers as proxy forces, blurring the lines between espionage and cybercrime. Today, Baratov serves as a cautionary tale for hackers worldwide and a symbol of how powerful nations sacrifice individuals to protect their interests. In an era where intelligence agencies actively recruit cybercriminals for state operations, even seemingly independent criminal hackers may find themselves caught up in international espionage. The basement hacker who thought he was just making easy money became a pawn in a geopolitical chess game he never understood, abandoned by his handlers the moment he became inconvenient. So here's what I want you to think about as you close this video. Somewhere right now, there's probably another young hacker getting their first message from someone claiming to be a fellow criminal. Someone offering easy money for simple jobs. Someone who speaks their language and never asks uncomfortable questions. That hacker has no idea they're about to become a weapon in a war they do not understand, against people they'll never meet for causes they do not believe in. When nation states turn teenagers into expendable weapons, when powerful countries destroy young lives to protect their own interests, when the architects of digital warfare walk free while their victims rot in prison, what does justice even mean? Let me know in the comments what you think, and subscribe for more stories where ordinary people become pawns in an extraordinary game of power.